Ohio's Republican governor has broken from his party to veto an anti-trans measure. On Friday, Governor Mike DeWine vetoed a measure that would have prohibited Ohio minors from taking puberty blockers and undergoing other hormone therapies or receiving gender reassignment surgery that would further align them with their gender identity. It would also ban transgender athletes' participation in girls' and women's sports. Wow, holy crap, a Republican governor vetoing that crap and actually doing something good. Awesome. Now, this had passed the legislature earlier this month with only Republican support. That said, Republicans can override the veto. The question is, of course, will they? Now, that's an important question because these bills are not popular. Okay, nobody cares that much about going after transgender people. In fact, there's a majority of people that are like, no, leave trans people alone. Like, why are you targeting them with these crappy bills? Let me go to some polling to support that. In a Data for Progress poll taken back in November, 55% of voters believe that state lawmakers should not be allowed to implement full bans on gender-affirming care. So you have a pretty clear majority of people who are against this, the government basically getting into people's personal lives. And not only that, but again, people don't really care about this. This is not a pressing issue. According to an online survey of more than 20,000 adults conducted in late August, just 17% believe politicians should focus on restricting gender-affirming care, while 33% thought they should focus on protecting transgender individuals. So once again, you do have a majority of people that are saying we should focus on protecting trans people, whereas the people who are trying to push politicians to do trans bans are a clear minority of people. So the rest don't really care one way or the other. It is not an issue that galvanizes the public. Only people's brains who've been rotted by conservative media and reactionary grifters believe that politicians had to focus on stopping trans people from being themselves. That's really it. These bans are a solution to a non-existent problem. The existence of trans women does not erase women. Okay, this is a narrative that is crafted to distract and scare people, and I'm glad the majority of people aren't buying it. And we've seen that in recent elections where Republicans ran on, oh no, scary trans people. Look, the only time trans people can be scary is when you intentionally misgender or dead name them in order to be a jerk. All right? If you don't do that, trans people are lovely. But seriously though, this is not an issue where, let me put it this way. This issue is life and death for trans people. It's not like, oh, you're hurting their feelings by not using pronouns. No, what's going on is the dehumanization. They face threats, they face violence. There's, of course, a lot of self-harm in the community, which can all be eliminated, reduced greatly by the acceptance of their existence. That's it. That's what they're asking you. Now, of course, it frustrates me when there are people out there saying, well, look, I don't mind trans people, right? But they just got to stop shoving it down my throat. Well, how are they doing that? That's the question, right? I always want to ask, how exactly are trans people shoving it down their throat? What does that even mean? And of course, you did drill down into it, and the answer always seems to come down to them literally existing in public. Doing what normal people do, which is to live their lives. Because trans people are normal people. They're just like everybody else. They're just transgender. That's it. They're aligning with who they are on the inside with the outside. Normal. Like what we all do. As a non-trans person, my inside matches my outside. And that's exactly what trans people are trying to do. They're trying to get their outside to match their inside. That's it. That's really it. The people who are against transgender people have never really spoke to or listened to them, never really had an open mind. They've been very closed-minded. Look, when you talk to trans people, all they want to do is to live their lives and to live it without fear. That's it. That's it. That's all they want. That's the great trans agenda right there. I've just exposed it, laid it bare for all of you to see. The trans agenda is just to be able to live their lives without fear. That's it. Now, I have some quotes from DeWine, which I think are pretty great. He said, parents have looked at me in the eye and told me that but for this treatment, their child would be dead. Like I just mentioned, it's life or death, right? He said, youth who are transgender have told me that they're thriving today because of their transition. DeWine also, in a rare principled stance for a Republican, okay, and I got to give him credit for that, said, why is the government trying to prevent parents from being parents? Hey, that's a good question. I mean, he said, parents are making decisions for the most precious thing in their life, their child. These are gut-wrenching decisions that should be made by parents and should be informed by teams of doctors that are advising them. And there it is. That's a conservative position. He said, while the parents, doctors inform those decisions, it is the parents who know their child best. Were Ohio to pass HB 68, Ohio would be saying that the state knows what is better, what medically is best for the child, than the two people who love that child the most, the parents. 100%. So it's kind of ironic, right, that the pro-freedom small government party has been trying to force government to get in between the parents, the doctors, in order to prevent them from getting much needed health care. That's what gender affirming care is. It's health care. Allowing transition should actually be a conservative position because it's not something the state, the government needs to be getting involved with. They have no business telling people how they can identify and then to use the power of the state to get in between them and their doctor. That sounds very conservative. Whatever happened to personal freedom? Whatever happened to liberty? Apparently it doesn't exist because you have a lot of conservatives that want to control people's lives, which makes them not at all conservatives. It makes them big government interlopers into people's personal lives. Makes them hypocrites. But thankfully, DeWine on this issue has shown that he actually does have a conservative position, which is to allow people the freedom to do what they need to do for their own personal lives. Freedom and liberty. I love it. Now, that said, when asked about what his biggest influence was, DeWine said it was not only the parents, but also factual information. Representatives from most major medical organizations in the U.S. and Ohio, including the Ohio Children's Hospitals, spoke out against this bill, along with, of course, testimony from parents, therapists, children themselves who are affected by this. And I think that's an important voice, too. You have to listen to the people who are making these decisions, the people who, are affected the most by these decisions and what it actually means to them. And those are the people that tend to get left out of these conversations. Now, funny enough, even detransitioners, okay, these are individuals who previously identified as transgender, but have since detransitioned, that's why they call them detransitioners, they've decided to lend their voice, and they spoke out against this bill as well. Overall, it's a big win, but there's a caveat to it. DeWine did announce his intention to use administrative processes to prohibit surgeries in the state. He also said he would gather data on transgender care for both youth and adults. Now, I have no issue with gathering data. I think the data is going to show what it already has been showing. So far, and yes, I will admit that we have a limited amount of data, sure. But so far, that data backs gender-affirming care. It just does. And I'm, it's not going to be too much of a stretch to believe that more data, more studies is just going to continue to add to the support of gender-affirming care and add to the support of the transgender community. And so go ahead, do more data, do more studies by all means. Perhaps these studies and this new data that they aim to collect will show us how to better support the trans community, especially trans youth. So I'm all about data. I'm all about information. So yeah,